All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Legacy Evolution Deluxe Class Devcon. And yeah, it's cool to finally get a version of this character in my collection. If you're unfamiliar with Devcon, that's because he was in, I'm pretty sure, just one singular episode of the G1 cartoon. Basically, he's like an Autobot bounty hunter, and he went on a little adventure with Smokescreen. And yeah, it's kind of been it's another one of those characters where it's like, yeah, I mean, he was just in like one episode of the cartoon, but it's always been kind of a cool design. They've done a couple different versions of him in the past, like as BotCon exclusives and things like that, because he is a little bit obscure. And maybe they've just done this once. I have this perception that he's like always a retool of Scourge, but I can't actually think of more than one specific figure that is. Which I get to an extent because like his vehicle mode is supposed to be kind of vaguely Cybertronian, so it's like, okay, Scourge has a Cybertronian vehicle mode, and then he also has like the thing on the top of his head that looks exactly like Scourge's thing. So they usually retool him from Scourge, but what's funny about that is like, well, okay, the version of Scourge that I'm thinking of that he was retooled from was the Generations one that actually didn't have a Cybertronian vehicle mode. It had like a weird stealth bomber mode, and they remolded the head anyway because Devcon doesn't have a goatee. So it was like, okay, but then where's the where's the connective tissue there otherwise? But either way, it's cool to get a new figure of him that's actually just its own thing. This is a retool of the Studio Series 86 Blur, but it is, it's pretty night and day. Like they've remolded a lot of stuff on here. It's pretty different. He comes with 3 accessories here. He comes with his gun here, and then these 2 thrusters, which actually are part of the vehicle mode. You're supposed to put them on the back here, like this, to kind of complete the look there. But if you don't like that look, then you can put them other places. There are also holes here on what will quite obviously be the arms. I think that's like the one part of the vehicle mode that I'm not super fond of, is I wish that there was kind of some panel here that kind of filled in the gaps, because otherwise it's pretty obvious what's happening here. Like, these are the arms, and then his head is just hiding under there, and then these are the legs. Like, I mean, obviously if you know how the blur mold works, then you know that already, but it is hard to unsee him as just like a guy lying down and folded up a little bit. So if they had something hiding these gaps, I think that would help a lot. Like, you can, if you want, these are kind of like offset so that they can sit next to this block here. So you could plug them on to the arms like this to give them the extra thrusters there, or if you plug them on this way, they're angled in a little bit more towards the body, so it doesn't really hide those gaps at all. But I don't know, changes the shape in a small way. So if you like that better, you could also put them down here on the what will be the shoulders, either the high version or the low version, depending on which one you have pegged into which side. I generally prefer them where they're supposed to be, but it's nice to have some options there. And then as for the gun, there's just a peg or a hole right there underneath the front section. You can just peg the gun on like that, and I think that works pretty well. Again, that might bother me on a kind of like more sort of iconic design that just like had an extra gun underneath it. But since I don't have any super strong attachment into to what Devcon's vehicle mode is supposed to look like, I think that looks pretty good. I don't think it makes it look any worse. I think that that's good weapon storage for this guy here. One thing that's kind of funny, some like I guess kind of cheating that they do, is in his robot mode he ends up with these like red bars on his his abs here, and in the cartoon they do end up on like the top here, which is mostly implied to be like, oh, that section moves up. But they don't have that actually move, because this is just tapped into like where the seat was in Blur's vehicle mode, and they still want to get that detail on there, so this is just a separate panel that folds over. But both of them are visible, so I guess that kind of makes it not cheating. It just kind of changes what the design is. But I just think that's kind of funny, since like in the original design it's more implied that those are the same part rather than there being 2 of them in vehicle mode. But that's not really here nor there. So yeah, I like the vehicle mode. I think that it just for a Cybertronian design, it's kind of a neat look. I just wish that there was some kind of connective tissue between the arms there. because that looks a little bit awkward in terms of comparisons in this mode. Just for the standard one, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe for whatever that's worth. I mean, really, this could be kind of whatever size, so, you know, scale kind of doesn't really matter with them. And then here he is with Studio Series Blur, just so you can see how quite different the vehicle modes are. Like, you know, generally the arms end up on the side and they're kind of in the same place, but they don't do that whole extra step of having like the armature that shifts them back, because like these are Blur's shoulders and these are Devcon's shoulders. You know, the head, you know, still hidden by like panels and stuff like that, and it's just in here, but the panels are quite different. And then, you know, there's the extra step with the fin. You know, the general transformation scheme is pretty much the same, but there are very few actual shared parts. I think that the only things that I've really found, I'm assuming that probably like the section of the body that the seat tabs into on Blur is the same as his, but I haven't really investigated that. And I'm pretty sure the feet are the same. They do. Oh no, yeah, they're the same way. Yeah, the feet are the only part that I could really see. There's probably some stuff in robot mode too, like maybe like the upper legs or something like that, but we'll get there when we get there. But yeah, in terms of a transformation, you know, I'm going to take this stuff off. You can kind of leave it all on because there's a version of where all this stores in robot mode where it just kind of stays in place. But you know, I'll show that off when we get there. But for now, we can just take that off. First thing you want to do is just take this this panel on the top here, which tabs in pretty well, so it can be kind of annoying to untab it, but you just want to untab that and just leave it off like this for now. The only reason we untab that now is because so you can bring it up just so we have clearance to untab the arms and just bring the shoulders out so that we have clearance to do all the stuff with the legs. Like Blur, you untab the feet from the underside here and kind of open up the shin sections, and then rotate this whole section out so that the knees kind of sit in place properly. We can split the legs and then bring the shins back into place like that. They kind of just tab in. They don't really like click in or anything. And then take the feet and just click them down just like that. And then for this whole back section here, it's on this like kind of, you know, double hinge armature where it kind of folds in like this and then tabs into place like that. It's a very satisfying click. And then you just take this panel and just fold it further onto the back. And then the arms, you kind of rotate them just a little bit in because they kind of sat at this weird angle to get the wings at a weird angle. But, you know, they made it so that the wings are just kind of like, you know, parallel to his arm in robot mode rather than like still sitting at a weird angle, which I kind of appreciate. And then if you want, you know, you can kind of like leave out the thrusters as like little like hand blasters or something, kind of similar to like how you can do on Kingdom Cyclonus. But you can fold these out, rotate around the arm, and then tab them back in to reveal the hands there. I always like it when they do that trick of like hiding the thrusters in the arm section like that, because they kind of get an extra weapon, and then they can also, you know, like, I don't know, cleanly hide away. And yeah, there we have Devcon in his robot mode, and I think he looks great. It's great to see a version of this guy that isn't just like, you know, reusing a Scourge mold, because, you know, he's got the little head thing on there, but otherwise, you know, they've got pretty different silhouettes, and, you know, I don't think the wings that Scourge usually has like really work for him. But yeah, no, it works pretty well. Honestly, I think that it looks better proportionally than the Blur mold did, even though it's, you know, using a lot of that same design. In terms of articulation, the head is, I assume it's on a ball joint. Yeah, it's also kind of like Blur, where like the ball joint is like at the bottom of a sculpted neck. So like, you know, it kind of looks like his chin is just sort of like sunken into a neck that's just like right there. It's kind of, I don't know really how to explain it. And it feels like maybe the connection is a little bit too far forward. So like when you rotate his head, you know, his head is kind of shifted that way a little bit. But, you know, still works pretty well. The shoulders here are on universal joints, so you can rotate them around like that, and then out to the side about that far. He's got bicep rotation, about 90 degrees of elbow bend. Does he have a wrist swivel? No, I don't think so. Yeah, no wrist swivel. He's got a waist cut. Hips can go forward and back, and out to the side. He's got a thigh swivel, kind of internal there. He's got about 90 degrees of bend at the knee as well. And then the feet, they have ankle tilt, and then they can't really tilt back, but you can tilt them forward because of how it works for transformation, which I do find to be, you know, pretty helpful when you're trying to get them in like action poses. It's a forward-facing ankle tilt is always something that is really helpful for getting like nice dynamic posing on figures. But yeah, no, pretty effective articulation. It's like it's mostly just the Blur mold, but he's got a few things going for him where like he doesn't have like the really awkward looking head, and he doesn't have the huge panels lying off the back. Like his backpack is maybe a little bit more than Blur's was, but still I feel like he kind of pulls it off a little bit better. In terms of his weapons, obviously we can have him hold his gun here. And then in terms of the Evo Fusion gimmick, which it feels like just they're calling, like sort of weapon versatility, like a full-on gimmick. But what they tell you the Evo Fusion gimmick is you can take the thrusters and you can plug them in either whichever way you want. If you want them to sit higher or lower, peg them into the side of the gun to give them like a, triple barrel gun. And, that looks okay, but whatever. But yeah, in terms of storage, I think you have a pretty decent amount of options here. He's got these two holes on his back here. So if you want, you can take the little thrusters and actually plug them in as like making it like a jetpack, which I think is a cool idea, except when you rotate them to the side, it just makes it stick out like way too far off the back there, which is a little awkward. Alternatively, you can still store them on the legs. Now, the cleanest way to store them is like this. So they're kind of like facing down, and he's got the clearance there, so he can still stand up. And then he's got like little jet boots, which I think is cool. But this is the opposite. Like they've swapped sides for transformation. So like if you want to just like leave them in place, then I tend to just kind of leave them up like this, just so like when I'm transforming the figure, I don't have to take those parts back off and put them back on. So it looks a little worse. I wish that they had kind of found a way to like have these actually just have central pegs and then rotate past this block, so that you could just kind of take it and then just like rotate it around. But that's like such a nitpick. It's like it doesn't really matter. Like if you want to take these off and have it look better and just put them back on, like I don't think that's that big a deal. But if you really don't like parts farming and you want these to just stay in place, I don't think it looks like terrible with them facing like this. It doesn't mess with the like knee articulation or anything because they sit off to the side. So whatever. And then as for the gun, if you want, you could like peg it onto his arm to have it be like an arm gun. I think that looks okay. You can peg it onto his shoulder to have it as a shoulder gun. It's a little small for that, but you can do that. You can, of course, use either of these holes on the back here and peg it in like that. And again, sticks off a little bit too far off the back, but I think that generally works as weapon storage. Again, what I usually do is I kind of usually just leave it in place because you can leave it pegged in on the bottom here. The caveat to that is then when you fold this up, it doesn't quite have the clearance to actually tab into place. But it also kind of stays in place just fine because of that like click of the joint there. Like it still gets to click into place and it's like totally solid, but those tabs aren't technically going into the slots that they're supposed to be, and the whole thing is sitting at a bit more of an angle. So if that bugs you, then you can use either of these. But personally, I don't really mind it sitting at an angle like that, and I kind of like the idea of being able to just like transform him fully without taking off any parts and have all the weapons be like where they store in robot mode, just like by default. I think that that's really cool. But if you want it to look slightly better, then switching the boosters around to the other side helps. And then if you don't like the angled backpack there, then you can plug in you've got options. Basically, is what I'm saying. And I think that that's pretty nice. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, here he is again with Kingdom Sideswipe. So you can see pretty average size Deluxe, a little bit taller than Sideswipe, but I think that works out. Here he is again with Studio Series Blur, just so you can see how they're really kind of completely different looking. Like again, the feet are shared parts. I'm assuming that some internal part of the body here is the same. Like this gray piece is the same as Blur there. And then it looks like, yes, the upper thighs, I think, are the same piece. And I assume the, connective bits are the same as well. But that's kind of it. I mean, there's probably like some, internal armature pieces that are the same. But for the most part, they look pretty different. And honestly, I think he looks better. Like, he just holds the proportions of this figure a lot better. I think he's got more kind of natural moving shoulders rather than the weird setup that Blur had. The head sculpt is just proportionally a lot better, because I don't know who designed this one, but that's not how you should do a Blur head sculpt. It's that has to be wearing a helmet, not have like hair. But they're two different designs there. But yeah, no, I think that they look pretty good together. Oh, there we go. There's another shared part, is the little elbow pieces. But yeah, so they pretty much feel like completely different figures that just have like kind of similar transformations. So yeah, works out. And then last but not least, here he is with pretty much the only other character he had any significant like interaction with in the cartoon, his Earthrise smokescreen. And I think that they look pretty good together. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. It's just kind of a character that is long overdue for a mainline release, like obscure in one episode, but always been kind of a cool design. I've always really liked the look of him having like these like red boots like halfway down the legs. I think that that's a really neat design. I like the the little like red stripes on the tummy. I like the Scourge head without the like goatee and beard and everything like that. Yeah, just not really a whole lot else to say about him. Pretty simple figure. Just kind of enjoyable. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to him. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Make sure to check me out on my Instagram account. That's toys.n.art. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Generations Legacy Evolution Deluxe Class Devcon.